So it's been about 5 days since the latest Sea of Thieves adventure was released, and unfortunately, whilst the main adventure and story beats of this one are great, there have been some real issues and controversy surrounding this one. I wasn't going to make a video on it, but today Rare have announced some changes which I think are important to let you guys know about, and so in this video I'm going to talk briefly about my thoughts on the adventure as a whole, the issues surrounding the cooperative gameplay for it, and the changes that Rare have implemented to try and reduce the negativity surrounding this time-limited event. Hello pirates, my name is Ellie and I post regular Sea of Thieves videos on this channel. If you want to stay up to date with the game, then remember to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when I put up a new video. I think it goes without saying, but as I'm going to be discussing the adventure, there are spoilers ahead, so be warned. With that being said, let's get into it. First of all, I just want to touch on my thoughts of the adventure as a whole. In terms of gameplay experience, this has to be my favourite adventure so far. It's far more complicated than simply visiting islands and speaking to characters, and I think that's what made it more enjoyable for me. The main mechanic revolves around use of lighthouses, similar to those used in the Pirate's Life Tool tales. In order to progress your way to the top of the Twisted Sea Dog Tavern and rescue Merrick, you have to use the lighthouses to light braziers which reveal parts of the parkour path that goes up to the top of the Sea Dog Tavern. It's not as simple as use each lighthouse once either. You have quite a bit of back and forth to do, from lighting braziers manually with your lantern, raising capstans, and then also using the lighthouses to light the larger braziers. I thought this was a fun change-up for the adventure to feel more involved, and you definitely feel like you're doing more to progress rather than just speaking to somebody. For those of you who are solo players, you'll be pleased to know that this is definitely something you can solo. It's just going to take you a little more time due to the travel between each area in the instance. In terms of the fight side of things, there are quite a few phantoms about, but they're like one-hit kill or 2 sword swipes, so not really a major threat. Just watch out for them knocking you off the top of the lighthouses. The entire area is surrounded by the Sea of the Damned and a number of Dark Brethren ghost ships. Now, I was expecting this to be much more of a threat, but if you park your ship close enough to the tavern or under one of the docks, you can easily park out of range of these ships and not even have to fight them at all. I'll be honest, this is the first area where I'm a little bit disappointed. When you first set out on this adventure, you speak to Larina, who advises you that Pirate Lord is waiting for you at the docks. He informs you that you'll need a bunch of supplies, suggesting it'll be quite the fight. But given that the deeds for the adventure only require 3 ghost ship sinks, you literally need 9 cannonballs if you can hit your shots. In my opinion, this was a missed opportunity. I feel like the sea battle with the Brethren ships should have been more impactful, and it should have been a real struggle to get through. The Pirate Lord also suggests that you'll need other crews in order to stand the best chance of success, and again, if anything, it's more complicated with other crews there. The area where you light the lighthouses and braziers can become really confusing with multiple crews doing different things, and especially because the only call out that's actually mentioned on screen is when the lighthouse is lit, not the braziers. So it's all very well if a lighthouse is lit, but it's not really clear whether they've put it in the right place to light the brazier, so it can get a bit messy. Now, the biggest issue for me, aside from the one I'll talk about in a minute, is the fact that the story aspects and ending scene of this adventure can be triggered by just one pirate. The scene happens right after the parkour course, and so if you're the unlucky pirate who is at a lighthouse, you'll essentially miss the ending if you don't have a bunch of crews who are willing to wait. And in fairness, it's not even entirely clear that you're screwing people out of the ending, because it's simply a prompt to speak to Merrick. I feel something like this should have required all crew members to be present, or at least black screen all crew members to the right area so we could all enjoy the ending. If I'm being completely honest, the ending of this part was also a little bit lackluster. The Dark Brethren, this evil crew who've been desperately trying to get secrets from Merrick, essentially just bug out through a portal of some kind without saying anything beyond threatening Merrick's family. I get the feeling that there's more going on than meets the eye here, or at least I hope so. The adventure ends with a short trip to the North Star Seapost to deliver a letter from Merrick to his wife. Now, this part literally had me welling up. It's one of the most emotional scenes I've ever seen in Sea of Thieves, and in all honesty, it makes the adventure. Overall, it's a great adventure. I love the mechanics, and I think the story aspects are great. I think this adventure was about finishing off Merrick's story arc, and it certainly does that. Now, those are my thoughts on the actual adventure. Now on to the more controversial topic of the PvP and spawn camping issues that have been happening and Rare's response. The main thing that has people upset with Rare about this adventure is the unfortunate side effect of the instance being shared by multiple crews. spawn campers very quickly discovered that they can use this instanced area to harass and spawn camp players. Now, I think it's important that we clarify that I'm not talking about TDM here. Players who want to use this instance to group up and TDM with other willing crews are more than welcome to do so, and I see no problem with this at all. In fact, it's quite fun. However, spawn camping is something entirely different. Spawn camping and harassing players who are there purely to complete the adventure is just plain toxic and ruins the experience for everyone. There is literally nothing to gain from doing this, and the argument that PvP is enabled so it gives you some god-given right to harass other players is just a load of shit. The argument that players who don't want to be camped can just leave and find a new instance is also a crock of shit, because why is it that players who are trying to enjoy an adventure that Rare spent time developing with a lot of hard work should have to leave rather than the idiots who aren't there to appreciate the story, the set piece, and the mechanics of this adventure? If you want to TDM, then that's fine. Go and find some crews to TDM with. You leave and you jump servers and you find instances with people willing to TDM with you. Don't ruin the experience for other players. Now, I think a lot of the controversy, at least from what I've seen on Twitter, surrounds the idea that PvP should have been disabled in this area altogether, or that this area should have been crew instanced and not a shared experience. The problem is that goes against everything Rare have ever said about the game. It's the same reason they will never bring PvE-only servers to the game. They want the wholesome experiences that can only happen with random crews in a shared open world. And unfortunately, in order to get that, you do have to put up with the small minority of idiots that insist on ruining it for other people. You can't have one without the other. I have no doubt that Rare were fully aware of the potential risks during the development of this adventure, but the benefits of the wholesome experiences and the support for solo players and multiple crews working together probably outweighed the risk of instances where players were going to be harassed. Spawn camping is still an issue in the adventure mode, the normal, gameplay mode, and unfortunately, it's an issue in any online multiplayer open world game where PvP is enabled. It's one of those unfortunate side effects of letting people be who they are on the internet. Now, I'm not trying to dumb down the effect of this issue at all. I genuinely do think it sucks that some players were unable, or even in some cases unwilling, to do the adventure because of the spawn camping idiots. However, I will say that from polls I've seen in Discords, and even in my own Discord, players have mostly reported being able to complete the adventure with no real issue. Our first attempt at the adventure was met with a broadside galleon who was intent on screwing with us. Luckily, we did get timed out of that adventure pretty quickly because no one was doing it, and they were all just killing each other. Our next instance was a bunch of sloop crews who were all happy to figure it out together. Now, I'm not trying to shit all over people who are saying that they've had problems. In fact, if Rare didn't see it as an issue, then they wouldn't have announced the changes they have today announced for the adventure based on community feedback. At the launch of the adventure, up to 4 crews were able to join an instance of the Twisted Sea Dog Tavern. The changes Rare announced today, most notably, from 2 PM UTC tomorrow, each trip to the Sea of the Damned will involve 2 crews at most. I believe this is their attempt at reducing the chances of running into a crew who are there just to grief players. I think it will also help with reducing the confusion among crews as to who is doing what from the mechanics side of things. They also announced that the time limit, currently 45 minutes, will also be increased to 1 hour to reflect the reduced crew members present. Overall, I think these changes are good, and I think perhaps it will reduce the chance of being harassed. I guess my only concern is that these changes needed to be made in the first place. It's a real shame, but it's great that Rare seem to be really hot on it with responding to community feedback lately. What do you think? Do you think these changes were necessary? Have you managed to complete the adventure without running into trouble? Let me know down in the comments. All in all, I think this adventure hit the mark bang on in terms of mechanics and it feeling like an actual story point worth noting. It was super cool to go to an external area, although somewhat familiar. I like the epic scale of the set piece, but I do feel that the battle side of it could and should have been a bit more of a challenge. I understand the need to balance for solo players, but given the multiple crews involved, I feel the ghost ship fight and the phantom enemies could have been a little bit more challenging. With Merrick's story wrapped up for now, I'm excited to see what's going to happen next with Adventures. We had all that big hoo-ha about Flameheart Jr., and yet nothing has really developed there. We seem to have gone off on a bit of a tangent with Merrick's story. I'm hoping now that that's out of the way, we can get back to some of the more meaty storylines with Flameheart and the lore surrounding all that. If you liked the video, then please do leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more Sea of Thieves content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the seas.